Typhoon Gaemi wreaks havoc on China, Taiwan, and the Philippines, forcing many to flee and causing significant losses. Typhoon Gaemi caused widespread destruction, fatalities, and widespread evacuations after tearing through the Philippines, Taiwan, and China. The storm's passage has brought attention to the necessity of emergency planning and response strategies for ever more severe weather disasters. Typhoon Gaemi tears apart the Philippines, leaving the country in grief. Typhoon Gaemi, also referred to as Carina in the Philippines, made landfall there with terrible fury, intensifying the monsoon rains that were already intense and wreaking havoc. Significant numbers of people were killed, infrastructure was damaged, and large-scale evacuations were necessitated by the typhoon and monsoon rains combined. Effect and direct consequences. When Typhoon Gaemi initially touched down in the Philippines, the heavy monsoon rains exacerbated the landslides and flooding. In addition to causing significant disruption and infrastructural damage, the catastrophic storm killed 22 lives. In 11 regions, including Metro Manila and neighboring provinces, about 393,000 people, 101,500 families, were affected, according to the Department of Social Welfare and Development, DSWD. Evacuations and widespread flooding. In Metro Manila and other parts of Luzon, flooding incidents were caused by heavy rainfall. In order to control the surplus water, the floodgates of the IPO and Bingo dams in central and northern Luzon were opened, which resulted in additional flooding. Before subsiding, La Mesa Dam, which is close to Metro Manila, also neared its breaking point. Over 86,000 people were evacuated from the worst-hit regions of Metro Manila, which included Caloocan, Malabon, Navotas, Valenzuela, and Marikina. Many of these people have since returned as the floods have decreased. Death toll and condition of emergency. 13 casualties have been confirmed by the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, NDRMC, and more injuries and possible casualties have been reported. Since July 9, the storm and monsoon rains have had a widespread impact on nearly 1.1 million people, 245,000 families, in the country. Metro Manila, Batangas, Cavite, Pampanga, and Bulacan all declared states of calamity, which made disaster money available to local governments. As the situation develops, more statements might be made. Disruptions in maritime and transportation. The storm's wrath reached the sea, causing an oil tanker off the coast of the Philippines and a cargo ship off Taiwan to capsize in the choppy waters. A fuel tanker, north of Manila, off the coast of Bataan, overturned while carrying 1.4 million liters of fuel. Although 16 of the 17 crew members were rescued by the Coast Guard, efforts to limit the oil spill have been made more difficult by the high waves and severe winds. To allocate the required resources, continual coordination with the private sector is taking place. Infrastructure deterioration. 8 bridges were damaged beyond repair by the storm, including the F. Manalo Bridge in Marikina, which was temporarily closed for safety reasons. Typhoon Gaemi produced significant disruptions, as seen by the cancellation of almost 150 domestic and international flights in Metro Manila on July the 24th and 25th. Taiwan, struggling through Typhoon Gaemi's wrath. After wreaking havoc on the Philippines, Typhoon Gaemi proceeded toward Taiwan, bringing with it torrential rains and powerful gusts. At least 5 fatalities and over 530 injuries have resulted from the storm, underscoring the typhoon's serious effects on the island. First hit and losses. When Typhoon Gaemi hit Taiwan, it left behind a path of severe devastation and turmoil. 531 individuals were injured nationwide, according to the Central Emergency Operations Center, CEOC. Before the storm made landfall, 2 women lost their lives, a 45-year-old lady in Hualien who died when a parapet wall collapsed onto her automobile, and a 64-year-old woman in Kaohsiung who was struck by a falling tree. Unfortunately, the storm kept taking lives. Among them were Wang Qinsheng, the chief of New Taipei's Wuliao ward, who was pinned by a motorized excavator, and a 78-year-old man who perished in a mudslide. Serious bodies and destructive elements. The effects of the hurricane went beyond casualties. Numerous injuries were caused by strong winds and heavy rain. A guy named Chen was injured in New Taipei when the roof of his 3-story house made of galvanized iron collapsed, cutting him on the head and extremities. After crashing his scooter into a fallen tree in Kaohsiung, a man going by Peng suffered multiple injuries. 531 injuries were registered nationwide overall by the CEOC. Pervasive disturbances. Taiwan was severely disrupted by Typhoon Gaemi's strong winds and heavy rains. There were several power outages, flooded streets, and a shortage of emergency personnel. A shipwreck off the coast of Taiwan was also caused by the storm, highlighting the hazardous marine circumstances. Due to the storm, all 22 counties and cities in Taiwan had to close their workplaces and schools on Thursday, underscoring the seriousness of the situation. Emergency response and evacuations. 8,569 people were evacuated from high-risk locations by local authorities ahead of Typhoon Gaemi's arrival. As of 11 p.m., the storm was about 30 kilometers east-northeast of Hualien County and was traveling at a speed of 12 kilometers per hour toward the northwest. Gaemi was a serious threat to the island, with gusts as high as 227 km per hour and maximum sustained winds of 184 km per hour. Continued rehab initiatives. Teams tasked with managing the aftermath frantically worked as the storm moved over Taiwan. The CEOC issued alerts regarding the possibility of more severe weather, with Wednesday night through Thursday anticipated to have the most effects. There were worries about more flooding, landslides, and structural damage due to the heavy downpour and wind. China, mass exodus and persistent dangers. Gaemi's next destination was the southeast coast of China. When the hurricane hit the province of Fujian, more than 240,000 people had to be evacuated. More than 3 million people live in Putian City, Fujian, which saw major disruptions include the cancellation of trains and planes as well as the activation of emergency services. Despite the typhoon's mild weakening after landfall, significant rainfall is predicted to fall over at least 10 Chinese provinces, including Beijing, throughout the next few days due to its expansive cloud bands. Relative to previous catastrophes and prospective issues. Typhoon Doksuri, which devastated China last year with catastrophic flooding and losses of around $30 billion, has been compared to Typhoon Gaemi. The enormous freshwater lakes of Poyang and Dongting in central China, as well as the lower parts of the Yangtze River, are of special worry to the authorities since they may reach hazardous levels again after heavy summer rains in early July. Furthermore, severe rains and possible flash floods are made more likely by Gaemi's high vapor content, particularly in northern China where the soil is already saturated from previous storms. Persistent effects and the future direction. It is anticipated that the storm will deteriorate into a tropical depression as it moves further inland. But there is still a risk of flash floods and severe rain, especially in places that are still recuperating from previous weather catastrophes. To prevent more harm and guarantee the safety of the impacted communities, the authorities have issued warnings and are actively observing the situation. The destruction caused by Typhoon Gaemi emphasizes how urgent it is to improve climate resilience and disaster preparedness. Countries in the typhoon-prone zone need to strengthen their emergency response systems and infrastructure in order to better survive future storms as extreme weather events grow more common and intense.